It's Retro Podcast with your host, Retro Lion. We talk music, entertainment, films, and more. And now, here he is, live, Retro Lion. Welcome back to Retro Podcast and Happy New Year. I am the host, Ben Cena, also the Retro Lion. And today we have Matthew Finlan with us. You know him from Ghosting. And please welcome Matthew Finlan. Matthew, it's great to have you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Ben. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
And how was your Christmas?
Christmas was good. Christmas was great. You know, my family, we love the holidays. We love the traditions,
Same here.
and we really get into it. So this year was no exception.
Nice. And how do you usually spend Christmas?
Normally I do. So I'm, a child of divorce. Hashtag we all are. So I do Christmas Eve and sort of like the pregame with my dad, and then I'll go and do Christmas with my mom, and we do a big, huge Boxing Day celebration. My family is crazy in that we do themed Boxing Days. So I think this was probably about year number 15 or so, where we will not unanimously, but collectively like vote a theme at the current year for the next year's celebration. So this past Boxing Day was an 80s Boxing Day. So, big hair, lots of denim, lots of jewelry, lots of shoulder pads. And then we voted for it to be like, I think next year is going to be it's either Winter Wonderland or like a frosty winter frost Christmas or something. I
Love
don't
the
know.
idea.
It wasn't the theme I campaigned for, but you have to, sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. But those were my holidays. How were yours? What do you do with your family?
Well, normally on the holidays, so we visit my mother's side, then we visit my dad's side in the mornings. Like me and my parents, my brother, we would have our Christmas in the morning, and then we would go visit my mother's side, and then in the evening we would finish it with my dad's side. We would do it in all one day. But this year we did it in 2 days because me and my parents and brother, we actually celebrate Christmas early in Disney World, Florida. So
Oh,
we went to
okay. I
Disney World for
see.
Christmas this year, and then when we got back from Disney, we finished it with my grandparents and my dad's sides.
You had like a prolonged epic Christmas.
Yeah,
So
pretty
that's
much.
okay.
Even
Yeah.
though we went to Disney the week before Christmas, it literally felt like it was actual Christmas Day because we went to this candlelight ceremony, and they usually have a celebrity read stories at the candlelight ceremony, and we got to see Brendan Fraser at the candlelight ceremony, and it was awesome. He was fantastic,
No way.
and
What
it
was
felt
he
like it.
reading? Was it like a Night Before Christmas or like Christmas Carol or something?
No, it was about the tale of Jesus being born.
Oh, okay. Like
Yeah,
they go back to like their true story. Okay. Wow. Wow.
my
Brendan Fraser. Whew. That's
my
cool. Was
dad
his
calls it
family
Mickey
there?
Mouse.
Mickey Mouse. I like that.
It
I
makes
like that.
sense.
It could also be Minnie Mouse too. Mickey and Minnie
Yeah,
Mouse.
Mickey and Minnie Mouse.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's awesome. And so how then the new year kicking off great for you too, you know?
Yes, the new year has been going very well. I was not happy about last week. I'm really pissed.
I
Excuse
know. I'm
I,
with you on that one.
I just hope you're safe. I just hope you and your friend Luke are safe.
Oh, yeah. I
Because
mean,
I hope this
uh,
isn't weird, but I love you guys. You make me laugh. I love the show Ghosting. Like it's one of the best shows I've watched, and I was very lucky I was able to watch it on Roku because I have Roku, and I was very lucky to find it on Roku and looking forward to season two. And he was actually on the show last not long ago.
yeah, he was telling me about that. No, that's so sweet of you to say. We are really hoping to get an American distributor for the show. We have a couple on the line, that's the classic conversation when you're trying to sell CanCon to the States. But thank you for saying that. And yeah, this year is going to be precarious, but every year has. And you think about us in an industry and even in sort of like a demographic, we've gone through a global pandemic that lasted a couple of years. Then we went through a writer strike and an actor strike that happened,
That was
and
awful.
it was awful. And so it's kind of seemed like, they always say that the arts it's always dying. And they've said that since, cavemen have danced around fires. And so I think the perilous nature of what we do is why we do it and what makes it so important. So yeah, I really respect what you say, and it sort of makes it worthwhile to do stuff like that, to know that it means something to some people as well. And we may just be silly, goofy girls looking for ghosts, but it has a greater meaning to the world at large. And so it's through our POV. And yeah, come what may 2025, we will still be looking for dead people. You know,
Oh
that's
yes,
probably what
the
we'll
show
hold
must
true
go
to.
on.
The show must go on.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. My gosh. How so it's available on Roku. So you found it that way.
I found on Roku. I was very like because I discovered it on YouTube first,
Yeah.
and then I was like, "How can I watch the show?" And then I found out that it was on CBC, and I was like, "Well, I don't have CBC." I was like, "Oh, Roku has it."
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I didn't even know that I knew it was on Roku. I'm gonna
Yeah,
check
they
that out.
have a version of CBC and also a version of GMC. And speaking of CBC, you and Luke were also the hosts at one of the events for New Year's Eve.
Yeah, that was
How was
pretty
that?
cool. That was really fun because we are part of the winter lineup for CBC. So they were like, okay, let's talk to our, our winter fam, see what's up, who's available. And they asked us to do this day where we came in and took these photos that you eventually people saw where we're like in front of this glittery background. And we just ended up having so much fun on that day in that moment that they were like, what are you guys doing at the countdown? And I was like, no, not the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And they were like, yeah. They just asked us to join. It's so incredible and such an honor because I love those of you who are listening who are not Canadian. We have a show called The National, and the chief correspondent is Adrienne Arsenault. And I love Adrienne. Like I watch her every morning with my coffee. So to get to ring in the new year with her was such an honor. And then also Jan Arden too. She's internationally known. So that was so cool. And like Canada has, is it, I'm not going to confirm that it's like 6 time zones, but we've got a bunch. So when we ring in the new year, similar to the States, there are a couple of times that it happens throughout the night. But the Eastern time zone is definitely the largest for us. So it was really cool to be there in Toronto, my hometown, when a couple years before, I remember like moving out of a terrible basement apartment and just wondering like, oh gosh, is this what life is going to be, to then get to be celebrating it with the whole country? Was like, okay, you know what, maybe 2025 will be a great year.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, because the way how I see it, like 2024 was a blast. I mean, the election sucked, but I
Yeah,
didn't, but I kept that separate.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
2024 was the best year, and there's a lot of great things happening for you. There's a lot of things happening for me for 2025. But if we, I mean, even though, yes, politics will be difficult, if we keep that separate, then we'll be in a good performance.
Oh yeah, I think we're
Yeah.
going to be great. Like you think about art.
Mhm.
Art thrives when people feel oppressed or they feel like they
Yeah.
aren't being properly represented. And not that it's a direct reflection, but you look at this past year in music alone, we had like uh, Beyonce came out with her music. You had Olivia Rodrigo had a huge breakout, Chappell Roan, Charlie XCX, Sabrina Carpenter, like these massive divas are taking the stage. Taylor Swift, the Eras Tour, the
Oh yeah.
largest we've ever seen. So yeah, politics are swinging one way, but then you really do see this voice coming out where it's like, okay, cool, cool, cool. Maybe the people are resisting and we're finding like we can still overcome what. Yes, thank you. Thank
Signed
you.
album, personally
Yeah.
signed by her.
Oh my gosh, that's impressive.
I
That's a relic. One day
yeah.
that's gonna be worth a house. And in this economy, that's saying something.
When my friend Valeria was on the podcast last year, and she was talking about Olivia Rodrigo, I showed that to her, and she's like, "How did you get that?" And I was like, "Auction."
Okay, okay. So you didn't actually get her to sign it, but you have a
No,
signed
it
copy.
is signed by
Yep.
actually her, but it was auctioned.
Hey, however you get it, you have it. And now you just can't let it go.
Yeah, I own three signed Taylor Swift albums. Luke has seen one of them.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
one Olivia Rodrigo, which you just saw, and then the other one is Dua Lipa from Optimism.
Yes. Dua. She did have music this year too, and you know what? I feel bad because she kind of like got underrated a little bit. But I like her music. I will just say the songs are starting to
Oh
sound the
yeah,
same, Dua. So let's just mix it up a little bit more. Yeah.
she hasn't written one bad song. Like it, they're the best.
Well, it's because they're all the same song. So it's like it's pretty good. We all like it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't view her this way. I just view her as a singer, nothing else. But as a compliment, she's very attractive.
She really is. For the first time, because she came from like the UK, I knew her voice before I knew her face. So I kept being like, who is this model that's like at all of these things? And I was like, oh, that is Dula Peep. That is her in the flesh, like Miss Lipa.
And
So
when she dyed her hair pinkish red, it just made her 10 times more attractive.
yeah. In fact, I was playing with her as a Fortnite character before I even put the
Nice.
two and two together because she was like available in this promo pack. And then I was like, oh, somebody was like, why are you Dua Lipa? And I was like, is that who this is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All I will say throughout those three, if anyone is my celebrity crush, it's Taylor Swift.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
she's been my celebrity crush for 10 years. I'm 25.
Wow. Yeah, Swift, she really has a hold on the nation. She's
Yeah.
kind of done something no one else has.
She
Did
just
you
seems
go to
real
her
nice.
concert?
I went to the Reputation tour. I wasn't able to get tickets for the Eras tour, but was
Yeah.
lucky to go to the Reputation tour. But I did go see the Eras tour in the movie theater though.
Okay, fair. I did neither. So
Yeah.
I'm Swiftless, if
Yeah.
there's such a thing.
Although I did meet a Taylor Swift impersonator though.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
she was
How
actually on the show back in November.
no way.
Yeah,
Was she almost as good as the real thing? Or
it was hard to tell. It was hard to tell who was who.
really? Like spitting
Yeah,
image? Oh my
like they're
God. Okay.
except and Melody. I am sorry for saying this, but although Melody is a lot shorter than Taylor Swift, because Taylor
I
Swift
see.
is my height. I'm 5'11", where Melody's like 5'1". Yeah, well, the story that I wrote, it was a story that I've been wanting to do for quite some time. It actually takes place in a town called Lakeside Marblehead, which is not far from Ontario, Canada, and it's my hometown. And been
Is
wanting
it
to
a
do a
Great
story
Lake
for
city? Where is it?
it's in well, it's up so I'm based in Ohio and
Okay.
it's up north in Ohio. So there's like this part of Ontario and then there's this part of Lakeside and then in the middle there's
Yeah.
these islands. There's Kelly's Island, Put in Bay, and then on the other side is Lakeside Marblehead. And then there's also Cedar Point, which is the theme park for that area. But it's a wonderful town. If you ever get a chance to come to Ohio, definitely go visit Lakeside Marblehead. It's one of the best towns. It's such a peaceful town. I've always wanted to do a movie that takes place at Lakeside Marblehead and was just trying to find the right time and the right script
Yeah,
and
I can
also the
picture. Is it
right team to
like
put it together because of finance. And we're going to make it this October and we're looking forward to it.
yeah, that's how you do it. That's, it's just like put the pieces. If you once you have an idea or a script, or for me, my creative process always starts with a title. I don't know why. Like you have the idea, but I always say if you can name it, you can tame it. And so like when I have an like ghosting, when Luke and I created that, we had the title ghosting within maybe the first 48 hours. Or we were at first it was called Literally Dead. Um, and then we kept pitching a bunch of different ideas. But once we got ghosting, that was the name, that was the hook, that was the thing. And we could flesh out the product and then we could pitch it to people and then promise that we could make that product. So what you're saying is very much that. It's like, yeah, you've had this idea, you knew you always wanted to film there, you've got the story, you have the thing, you find the people, you pitch the product, it becomes tangible. And that's literally all you do. And once you realize that like the emperor has no clothes, it's that way up until the big wigs in Hollywood. And just like the more experience you get, the more access to money you get, and then you just have people believe in you. And that's I really think the difference between people who've been doing it for a long time and people who are just starting out is their access to capital and resources. And that's why nepo babies do so well, because they have the access to all of that, and they're like, I got an idea I'm going to try, and like it can be half bad but they've got enough money to make it half good. And so
Yeah,
yeah,
speaking of emperors, never trust the mouse in the high castle.
no, no,
Never
that's
trust, never trust him. Go to Disney World is fine, but never trust his movie making.
fair. Yeah, yeah, wise words.
And if there's any advice that you would want to pass on to folks that want to get into television or film, what is the best advice you would pass on to them?
Don't. I would say, well, it really depends on what sector, because truthfully, I come from more of the performance side, and that I would say if anybody's looking into getting into being a performer full time to try and sustain yourself, be ready to be broke. And I mean that not as a euphemism, that take those words for their barest meaning in the English language. Like you really do go through feast or famine. And if that's something you can't grapple with, you shouldn't you shouldn't do it because it will get in the way of your art. And that's the truth. It will like, it really can. If I shouldn't speak of the royal you, for me, it was difficult when something started out as um, a hobby and something that I did because I really liked it. And it turned from like a passion into a profession. And then it then became the thing that I had to do to keep the lights on. And if I wasn't as good as I thought I wasn't going to book the thing that was going to allow me to keep doing it. So it was this like self fulfilling spiral that was like a snake eating its own tail. And it still is and will forever be that way. But the more I'm done it, the more I'm able to recognize the pattern that it's not easy. Not everybody's doing it. And sometimes you got to take a break because the burnout is real. And yeah, it's really hard to sustain yourself that way. In terms of the other side of film and like production and creation, I think it's a bit more sustainable. You can have a couple projects on the go. You can, sort of be working on the grounds with one thing while developing something with somebody else. But in short, maybe like my general advice, whether you're on camera, behind the camera, working in administration, fundraising, script writing, never be too precious with your work. I think that's a really important key. Um, know that like writing is rewriting. I can't tell you how many times I've rewritten the same text over and over and over again. Even on the day with the camera, you get there and you're on your mark and the lines don't feel right. And so you're there with the minds that you've all collaborated with, your director, your scene partner, sometimes the script writer's there. And you're
Mhm.
like, can I say this instead? And they're like, yes, thank you. And so writing is always rewriting, which is why I'm like, don't be precious. Don't sit in a little room by yourself and be like, it's not perfect yet, because it will never be perfect because it's never finished. Like working in film now, you see from day dot, especially with ghosting. And sorry, this is a long rant, but with ghosting, because I've seen that project from inception of an idea to pitching it in a network room to filming it in the field to editing it to delivering it to seeing how it's received. That is like the full journey of a piece. And you just realize there are so many brains involved with this step. There are so many people bring their brilliance to it that it becomes something more and better than what you could have ever originally imagined. And so if you start at square one, fixating on your end goal and it needing to be perfect, you're actually doing yourself a massive disservice in whatever you're doing. As an audition, if I'm like, I'm not nailing it, it's like because I don't have my scene partner yet. I don't have my lighting. I haven't let the words sink in. No, I'm not supposed to nail it on my first take. Or when you're writing a script, yeah, your first draft is going to be filled with plot holes, spelling mistakes, things that don't quite make sense to your reader as much as they do to you. That's why it's your first pass. And like when you're editing something, like it's not going to be good. And so get that out of your brain. Don't be afraid to fail, and then you're probably going to be okay. That would be my overall arcing advice to anybody trying to get into film and television or performance, because it sucks. And if you can take the piss out of yourself, you're going to do a lot better because someone else will take it out for you. And so you just got to be able to grin and bear it.
That's true because you learn from that experience and you build as you grow.
Yeah, truly. And I know it's such a cliche when they're like, you learn more from failure, but you actually do because you realize what you did wrong and how much it hurts and sucks. And you're
Tell me
like, I'm not
about
gonna
it.
do that again. Yeah. And like
Yeah.
even that with my bookkeeping, I got audited. And that's like every artist's worst nightmare. And I've been through that now, and I now know like for all of you listening, I did nothing wrong. Okay. The government just was like, why did you file 5 years of taxes at once? And I was like, because I'm a procrastinator. And so they were like, show your homework. I did. It was all fine. But that showed me, I was like, oh, I got to stay on top of that. And so it was a mistake I made that I'm like, never again. File your taxes, file your taxes, hire an accountant, file your taxes. That's actually would be advice number two. Don't be afraid to suck and file your taxes. Those are the
Yeah.
biggest things you have to do in this industry.
Yeah. Remember the actual date. Now, does Canada have is tax day different in Canada or is it the same as the US?
We do. So this is where it gets complicated. And this is why I got all screwed over. If you are an actor, you're technically self-employed. And so as a self-employed person, there are a couple different dates in the year. So there's the date you have to like file, which is April 1st. And then there's the date you have to like hand in your files and pay. Like, sorry. So you can pay April 1st, hand in all your paperwork June. It's like them being like, look, we know you're an independent business. It's probably a lot of work on your plate. If you pay us in advance, we're not going to be upset. Um, yeah, it's a lot. Luckily, I just sort of became uh incorporated, which is slightly different, but I'm gonna say it's my accountant who handled all of that. So he knows what to do. So basically, like I am an employee of my business, which is just like my artisticness. Because like you, as a you wear so many different hats as an artist. You're a writer, you're an actor, you're an animator, you're a producer, you are your own booking agent. So all of those services are encompassed under the same entity that is you. And so that's sort of just the way that we've had to do it because the government in Canada, at least, doesn't make it easy to be an artist at all. They definitely don't. They're like, what's your job again? And you're like, oh, I'm an actor. And they're like, yeah, but what do you do? And I'm like, no, I'm an actor. And they're like, okay, nice try. How do you make your money? And you're like, I make my money saying other people's words. And they're like, yeah, but who do you work for? You're like, it's different because like sometimes I'm working for Lionsgate and sometimes I'm working for Netflix, but it's not like I'm on payroll
Mhm.
for them. And so they're like, so how do you make your money? And I'm like, I just told you. And so, yeah, that's when they're like,
You
we're
have
going to
different
audit you
clients.
and we're going to figure this out. Yeah.
My mother's also a fan of the show Ghosting, and she wants to know what has been the intense moments that you and Luke had to face, or like, are there any intense ghosts? Because he was telling me about an episode that you actually had to face a demon or awaken a
Okay. He was talking about this new season or the season that's already been shot?
the season
Or,
that was already shot.
okay. Well,
But
we
like, what have
do.
you faced? It could be from old or new.
Yeah. Well, okay. So what's interesting about the show is like we are going into really haunted places. Like we are. And because we have the national broadcast company behind us, some of these places are willing to let us come in. Like we've had other ghost hunting teams be like, how did you get that location? We've been trying to get there. And we're like, honestly, we just asked. But that brings us, yeah, into some of these really freaking freaky places that not a lot of people go. One of them, I'm trying to think of a really because season two, which comes out March 21st on YouTube and Gem, so you will be able to access it, especially through Roku, like you said. We get some great spots. I'm not gonna lie. It's a step
Nice.
up because season two we go cross country, and we go as far north as the Yukon and as far east as Newfoundland, like an island off the coast. So we really like cross the country. Um, so I will say, bigger scares season two. I'm not going to tell a story from season two though, because I want to keep it all there. So season
Understood.
one, the scariest place. Okay, I actually do know. Okay, I unlocked a little thing. We were in a place called the SDG jail with Frankie Grande and his husband Hale. They were great guests, super invested in the investigation, and they really liked to use the tools. Like they were taking it seriously, which I appreciate. And we were in this courtroom, which is attached to this jail, which is one of the oldest jails in Canada. And it had a really bad past, like hundreds of bodies buried in the cement that's underneath the grounds, like they know it. And so this courthouse is on this building, and we're using what's called a REM pod. Those of you who are familiar with tools, those of you who watch the show, it's one of our favorite tools. Actually, wait, do I have Oh, it's not accessible. I was almost going to pull it over, all of the tools. But anyway, so Frankie is getting a lot of success with a judge in this courtroom. And we do this thing where we'll always ask, like, do you want to talk to people alone? And this thing went wild. So it tells everyone to leave the room, but Frankie to stay there. And so this is something that happened, but wasn't captured on camera. While Frankie was talking to the judge independently, it's hard to describe. Imagine like I am Frankie right now, and this is a wall, and then there are like false things behind the wall. That's where we all went and hid. So we were like, we could see what Frankie could see. So I was looking at the back of the room, and I saw a shadow figure. Literally, like if you can see the camera, it was like moving, and then it ducked down, and I thought it was Robin, our camera assist, not wanting to be seen in a shot. And so I talked to our director, and I was like, "Who's back there? Is that Robin?" And he was like, "No one's back there." And I was like, "Are you sure?" And that's when Brooke, who is our first AD, who's been with us for both seasons, she's amazing. She was like, "Did you see someone move back there? Because I saw it too." And I was like, "Yes." And she described the exact thing I saw without me
Man.
saying it, which is how I know there was a shadow figure back there, which it's kind of startling when that happens because it is like you see it in the movies. It's a shadow. It looks like Peter Pan. And you're like, I just saw that. Like my eyes just saw the silhouette of a person ducking down. Like that's
Oh man.
actually, I can't explain that. And then the other thing that happened, which wasn't in the episode, but it's so weird, it happened in this very room. This used to be my bedroom. Now it's my studio. And I have a desk that's on wheels, very low to the ground. It's like an inch high on casters. And so we had just filmed episode 1 at the Merrill House, also available right now with Bacola Ayoka. And the third ghost in that episode drowned in the Picton Bay. She went in, she never came out. And this one day, like after we're done filming, we've come back. I'm sitting at my desk. We were talking about it. I move my desk, mind you, an inch off the floor. And there are these 2 wet footprints at the foot of my bed. And I was like, I can't explain that either. So that was bizarre beyond belief. And I'm the believer on the show. So I already believe. I just think that like spirits maybe are like, oh, Matthew could maybe like he can maybe share a message. Luke is gonna he's not gonna take me seriously because I can't levitate that bitch. But if I talk to Matthew, he might actually, respect me and I can tell him hi, kind of thing.
Well, Matthew, thank you again for
I
Matthew,
love
thank
it.
you again for joining today's episode, and I wish you the best with ghosting.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Ben. I was so happy to be here and best of luck with all of your projects in the new year. Let's
Thanks very much.
You're so welcome. Let's keep in touch when Ghosting comes
Oh
out. You let
yeah.
me know. And I want to know what your mom's favorite episode is of season 2. That's
Okay.
that's really important to me.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Spotify and follow us on Instagram. See you next week.